long, long, long time ago in 1956, the middle of the last century, Daphne Charters, who lived outside of London, England, worked with a group of fairies in her neighborhood. And they dreamed up an idea of something they called the Fairy and Human Relations Congress. The fairies were dismayed at the state of the world and what a mess that humans were making of the planet. This is in the time of the Great Wars. And so the fairies got permission from the higher up devas to bring together fairies from around the world to discuss the human problem and what could be done to make the world a better place. And they held this fairy congress in the fairy realm for dozens and dozens of years, starting at that early point. And that Fairy and Human Relations Congress was described in Daphne Charters' book, A True Fairy Tale, which I was given years ago, in 1977. I read the book and I was inspired years later to start a Fairy and Human Relations Congress on the physical plane. So I was selected by the fairies in some way to help bring this into being on the physical realm. And we started in 2001 at a location in the Methow Valley in eastern Washington in the North Cascades in this beautiful place called Scalitude Retreat Center. It was in the middle of nowhere, so to speak, as far as humans. There was no human habitations for miles around. We were in this wonderful forest, and we brought together 125 people and innumerable fairies and Davic beings to have a congress in the physical realm, and we invited the fairies to join us. And it was a very successful event, and the fairies loved it and the humans loved it, and so we've been doing it for 25 years since. And a lot of things happen at these congresses, and I would say that the most important things are education, frolicking and fun, but magic is the main thing. We're doing magic for the world to make the world a better place. The humans and fairies are both spiritual beings, and we're making magic together along with the other allies that show up. And so right from the get-go, from the early years, we had a lot of workshops. And so we bring in the best people we can find who are fairy communicators. And we've had the best in the world. We've had, for instance, Robert J. Stewart, who's written around 40 books on the topic. We've had David Spangler show up quite a few times, and David Spangler was one of the directors of Findhorn and is very well known. We had Dorothy McLean, who is the channel for the Davic beings at Findhorn, show up 4 times. And then we had Peter Tompkins, the author of The Secret Life of Plants, show up. He was 92 at the time, but he was still really in good shape. And we were able to give him a special award for his great work for the fairy realms and for the realms of the unseen beings. And so over the years, we've had over 120 presenters, and that's a lot of people, and they all bring their particular brand, their information, how they do the fairy communication or cooperation. And between all of them, we've built up this great body of knowledge of what the fairy beings and the fairy realms are like today in the world. And not only do we educate ourselves about them, but we communicate with them and we build cooperation. It's really important for the world to be having this cooperation at this time. So besides the education and our rituals and ceremonies, we always had a lot of focus on circles. We all get together on one big circle. We sing, we dance, we meditate. We have a lot of fun. There's a lot of circle dances, and there's a lot of hugging goes on, and there's a lot of laughter. We do a lot of singing. We have concerts. And one of the things that developed over the years is that we had this fairy parade. So after our main ritual on Saturday, we have a big fairy parade, and a lot of people dress up I'm in my dress-up outfit here, one of many, and we have this parade that caravans through the place with music and dancing. And at the end of the parade, I remember the first time it was like, well, what do we do? What's our climax point here? What do we do now? And I said, and so this bright idea popped into my head. I said, everybody line up in 2 lines facing each other, kind of like Red Rover, Red Rover. And so we all lined up, and then we charged each other. It became known as the fairy charge. And so we charge across the meadow, and when we meet in the middle, we don't strike any blows. There's no battles. We hug each other. And then we go back to our lines, and then we charge each other again. So we have these multiple charges, and it's so amazing. The first time it happened, it's like, so you're used to doing Red Rover, and there's human beings that are running towards you. But all of a sudden you're being these fairies and all kinds of other beings, because we're all dressed up, are charging at you. And so it's really an exhilarating part of the Congress, the charge particularly. Out of the 25 years, we've had 18 of them at Scalitude, that place in the Methow Valley. We've had 2 of them on the Hood River, outside of Hood River, Oregon, and the Columbia Gorge, a spectacular place, an old growth oak forest, very magical. And then the last 4 years have been outside of Salem, Oregon, in a place called the Old Growth Canyon. Again, it's a place of old growth, giant trees, a lot of just a really strong sense of place, of beings that live there, because it hasn't been. All 3 places have these old trees and a lot of continuity with nature. But this year, our 25th anniversary, we're moving it to Northwest Washington, to the Olympic Peninsula, to a little place called the Twana Springs outside of Quilcene, Washington. And so we're really inviting a lot more people, especially from Northwest Washington. Here's your opportunity. It's always been hundreds of miles from here. And so we're looking for local people that want to come. And of course, reunion of anybody that's ever come. Over the year, thousands of people have attended our event, and they're all invited back. And we're going to have a particularly great time this year, and with singing and dancing and charging and circles and ceremonies. And we're making magic for the world. We're working to make the world a better place from the spiritual point of view. There's all kinds of activism in the world. This is called subtle activism. And so we're working for the world, even though we look like we're a bunch of nuts. So, at any rate, if you think you could handle this, you're invited.